The National Cyber Security Awareness Month is an annual campaign held in October that focuses on raising awareness about the importance of cybersecurity. Now, this month-long initiative encourages individual organizations and communities to learn about cybersecurity risk, adopt safe online practices, and enhance their overall digital security. Now, this event again provides valuable information, resources, and guidance to help protect against cyber threats and promote a secure online environment. National Cybersecurity Awareness Month 2024 is a month-long effort dedicated to promoting cybersecurity awareness and education. It aims to empower individuals and organizations to take proactive steps in safeguarding their digital life, assets, and sensitive information. It also emphasizes the shared responsibility of cybersecurity among other stakeholders. Well, let's talk to the chairman for the Lagos State Cybersecurity Advisory Board, Dr. Fene Osakwe. He joins me live via Zoom from the United Kingdom. It's good to have you on the program, and a happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Hi, Tolu. That's interesting. I've never gotten that, so thank you. I guess
okay, well, it's good to start on that note. Let's begin with the current cybersecurity trend environment. As someone who has who had a front row seat to attacks that we face, what are some of the most concerning ones that you think we should be paying attention to right now, even as the celebration goes on the other side?
Amazing. Thank you very much for having me. First of all, I think that, there are several, every year I try to publish in January what the top threats I think would be in that year. And I did about 10 for this year. So maybe I should touch on one of them. And this is one that we are beginning to see a lot of, and it's called third-party risk. So what that really means, Tulu, is just that, for example, the laptop I'm using now is not designed by me, okay? It's a third party who gave it to me. The phones is a third party. The software on that laptop is a third party. So many organizations get to outsource a lot of their, technology, laptops, a few other things, even cleaning services, you outsource it because it's not the core of your business. So the trend we're beginning to see is that, and this is going to go on for a long time because people are outsourcing a lot more things, is that now, because certain organizations, especially, let's say, in the financial sector, where there's a lot of incentive to be able to, commit cybercrime activities because of financial gain, a lot of organizations are investing a lot to prevent cyber threats in their organizations, but then their third parties get breached. So, for example, in London, in July, for example, all the hospitals, okay, typically use a particular third party to be able to perform very technical tests for people. And what happened was that there was a cybersecurity breach with that lab in July. And all of a sudden, if both of us had previously gone to the hospital, for example, to say, oh, tomorrow, and we have an operation and I need to do blood transfusion, we are both O positive. All of a sudden, cyber criminals had manipulated those results such that we were no longer compatible. And the doctors all of a sudden said, look, we cannot trust this data before we go and actually kill people, and that could be disastrous. So for several days, people could not actually do operations or do anything like that. And so this is it. So they didn't breach the hospitals, but it was a third party. It's the same way we are beginning to see the same trend happen in banking. We are beginning to see things like the software vendors are getting breached. And that's a trend that we're beginning to see.
Well, but we've seen a rise in sophisticated attacks like ransomware and all. Let me ask you really that, are there any particular trends or attack methods that you're seeing gaining traction? And how can we stay, of course, one step ahead, if not two?
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could stay many steps ahead, but it's just, so it's interesting. You mentioned ransomware because, so just for the sake of those listening, ransomware is like digital kidnapping, okay? It is digital kidnapping, actually. So it is saying that all of a sudden you have malicious code has been sent to your computer, to your phone, and all of a sudden now you no longer have access to your data. And in order for you to have access to your banking app, to have access to anything, to have access to your system, to your servers, you need to pay a certain amount of money to the person who has stolen that system, or who has taken ownership of that system, who has your data. Otherwise, you lose that data. So think about an organization that is providing services to millions of people, and all of a sudden they suffer a ransomware and they are not able to give that service. So ransomware is on the rise and is actually one of the very big threats. But what is beginning to happen now in terms of ransomware is it's now moving to what is called a double extortion, and in some countries, a triple extortion. So what is happening is not only do I tell the organization that you need to pay $2 million, otherwise you cannot access your systems. After the organization now pays $2 million, what now happens is the attacker now comes again to threaten that even though you paid the $2 million, that was simply to access your data. If you do not pay an extra $1 million, I will publish the data that I have. So all of a sudden, you're beginning to pay for availability and then you pay for confidentiality. What is one way to stay ahead? I think that one way to stay ahead is to continue to drive awareness, because regardless of how sophisticated systems become, the systems ultimately are at the mercy of the individuals who operate those systems and the citizens who get to interact with those systems.
To the role of leadership in cybersecurity now, from your experience, how crucial is leadership when it comes to establishing strong cybersecurity practices in an organization?
Oh, look, leadership, it's a cliche, but leadership is super important. So let me try and push this in very brief time. Let's talk from the public sector and from the private sector. From the public sector, for example, this is one place we really need to give kudos to the Lagos state government. You know, being the very first state in the country to be able to take cybersecurity very serious, as to establish an advisory board, through the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology. And I think that really is a serious statement in saying we take this serious. We want a smart Lagos, which means a lot of technology interconnectivity. So there needs to be some professionals who are able to tell us what best practice is, such that from the get-go, we are infusing cybersecurity by design in the secure Lagos or in the smart Lagos we're trying to build. I think that's where leadership comes in. Okay, leadership is really coming with the tone from the top, like we say in the corporate world. If the leaders are not supporting cybersecurity initiatives, to be honest, especially in organizations, one, the security professionals will be extremely frustrated, because you need to remember that security is not, think about it like a toll gate when you're traveling by road. The toll gate or the police checkpoint is not supposed to make your journey faster. Sadly, it's to make your journey slower, just so that it checks certain things to be sure that the rest of the journey is safe for you. So it's like a gate. You slow down when you get to a gate. So if management is not able to explain that the reason why, when we are acquiring this solution, when we are doing these things, why security needs to be involved, you're not going to make it faster. It's because there are certain things we need to check to ensure that from a security standpoint, we have ensured that cybersecurity best practice, are entrenched in this organization. And that is the tone from the top that I think needs to always be set.
For leaders who may not have a deep technical background, but are responsible for security of their company's data, now, are there common mistakes or blind spots that leaders often have when it comes to cybersecurity? And let me add to that, how can they avoid falling into those traps?
So, yes, there are common mistakes. One of the mistakes leaders seem to make, especially in our country, is that we think that security compliance is security. So, for example, the moment that my regulator has come to check to see that I comply with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tick boxes, then I am secure. And that's a huge illusion, because security does not work that way. It is fantastic to be able to to meet the requirements of the regulator, which many times is the minimum requirements and it's okay, but it's a lot better to look at security holistically. So I think that that's one mistake, assuming that compliance is equal to security. The second mistake, I think, is sometimes when it comes to awareness and saying, look, these are cybersecurity hygiene best practice that everyone needs to take into consideration. Can we simulate a cyber attack and see exactly how this organization responds to it? One of the mistakes that is happening is people are not taking these simulations very seriously. I mean, one of the things I tell people now is the days of a cybersecurity strategy are over. Now, you need to be talking about a cyber resilience strategy. And what that simply means is rather than talk about how do we prevent a cyber attack in our companies, we should be talking about how quickly can we recover if we suffer a cyber attack.
Let's bring it home. Africa has a unique set of challenges and opportunities when it comes to cybersecurity. We see what our banks are even doing in recent times, trying to upgrade and all of that. And there's been challenges with that, I must tell you, even making some scared of banking at the moment. But we need to educate them and let them know that it's for the better. What do you think the future holds for cybersecurity across this continent?
So this is interesting because I was, having this conversation somewhere else recent, just few days ago, and I was giving my thoughts on this, and I said, and it's the same position I still have. I think it's the good, the bad, and the ugly for Africa and for our continent. So it's a funny situation. So we have a youth population. So first of all, the background is, it's common knowledge that there is a massive skill gap in cybersecurity across the world. In fact, in Nigeria now, people are no longer trying to be professional about poaching anymore, right? It's just very crude because there's a vacancy of close to 4 million cyber jobs across the world that are not filled. Then you have a continent like Africa that has very young people and a young population that the world is kind of waiting for. But then you flip it and then you see that even though that's the young population, from an education standpoint, we probably have about 20% of universities in Nigeria that teach cybersecurity, and not just cyber, any of the emerging techs, blockchains, AI, any of those things, okay? We just have about 20% of the universities that are educating people in that. So all of a sudden, the good is that we have a young population, which I think is the next frontier to be able to take tech forward. But we are not probably doing enough in terms of educating and empowering that population to be relevant to the openings and to the vacancies that are out there. So it's a tough place to be. But I think that as we continue to find ways to partner with different organizations to push the thoughts and to be able to get people more empowered and build capacity, I think that genuinely the young population in Africa hold the key to that vacancy and to that gap in cybersecurity skill across the world.
Honestly, this question is direct, and I'm going to ask you because most of the tech enthusiasts I've been able to talk to, I always like to ask this question about the AI and all of that. Many say this disruption might affect jobs, and some will say no, new jobs will be created. So I don't know. You're a major player in this space. How does that come to you? Can you make us also understand, really, we see what Elon Musk is trying to do in recent times, coming up with almost, you know what I'm talking about. So how does this come to you? What impact do you think this would have going forward?
So it's an interesting conversation. Will it take away jobs? It will take away some, and it will create new ones. So, for example, if you look at cybersecurity, it's pretty much the same thing, right? The very first time we ever heard of the word a chief information security officer, I think it was in 1995, right? Was it Citicorp then, which eventually became Citigroup? Never been heard. And then now you're having almost a cybersecurity gap for close to 4 million people being created. It's culture, and this is the way it evolves. Previously, there was nothing like a chief artificial intelligence officer in companies. Just a few years ago, certain companies have started having these kind of roles. So those new roles are created. However, There are high income, and then there are sort of income skills that are not so high income. And the sad thing is that artificial intelligence is simply beginning to help you automate certain skills. And what we are seeing is the skills that are really low income skills that could adjust. You could easily automate it, that it's helping you do. So, for example, in security, one of the things that you need to constantly do is be able to block, right, IP addresses that are trying to steal data from you. So you just find the IP address and then someone goes to block it. Now you could automate that with artificial intelligence and it's automatic. Okay. The moment it says it's blocking, the moment it says it's blocking. So if the only skill you had was I know how to block IP addresses, but that's out of the game gradually now. Okay. So artificial intelligence is coming and it's helping, to be honest, because it's helping us detect a lot of phishing threats a lot better now, simply because many of the threats now are coming from machines. So it's machines versus machines that can help detect it. So those are the positives. Of course, there are the other sides to it. The fact that, look, some of these models, how are you able to ensure that there's transparency, okay, and then there's accountability, because there's a lot about data privacy now across the world. So you need to also be able to say, this is what data I used, and this is exactly how I used it. And so that piece is still what, is really not 100% clear with all the models, but I think that gradually we're getting there. So I think that the people who should be scared are people who really do a lot of routine in their job. And so it's easy to be able to put a pattern to it. Those are the people I think should be, genuinely concerned. But you could upscale yourself to move to the jobs for the future.
But on a personal level, we hear a lot about cyber hygiene. Yes, I put this as almost my last question, because keeping ourselves safe online, it sounds very good. What do you think citizens, government, and businesses, what can we do to stay safe online? I'm scared when you talked about the online paying ransom, like kidnapping online. That's a bit scary,
So here's the thing, and the last thing I want to do is scare anybody.
Yeah, sure.
The point is, we're trying to make you aware that it does exist, okay, and this threat does exist. In fact, Tolu, the World Economic Forum says that after the US and China, the next biggest economy in the world is cybercrime. So this is the scale of what we're talking about here, that after the US and China, that is the next biggest economy. And most people are predicting that in the next 10 years, it will be the #1 economy in the world. So it's, from a business perspective, it is huge and it has to be paid attention to, okay? So it's not to scare, but that's what it is. Now, in terms of things people could do, and, one of the things is to make sure that when you see that your applications are out of date, it's important to update them, okay? Because many times the reason why those people who are pushing those application updates to you is because they have found out that there were gaps in the last version. Many times that cyber criminals are exploiting, and so they have created an upgraded version such that they have blocked a lot of those holes. When you do not update, what you are doing is you are leaving yourself vulnerable to be taken advantage of. So that's one. The second one is that multi-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication is very important. So on your WhatsApp, you need to put it on your Instagram, on your personal, on your emails, all of those things. Why? Because gone are the days where a password is able to protect you. 83% of attacks in the world are because passwords are stolen. So what you know is no longer the only thing required to authenticate into a system, because what you know can be taken genuinely. It could be taken by you telling your child to take your phone, you give the child the password to go play with the phone because you are busy doing something else. Now that password has moved to a child. Okay, so there has to be something else. And this is why you use token for banks, you use these other things. So it's important to have your, authentication on. The third thing, there are a lot of them, but just the third thing because of time. I think you need to look out for emails that seem to always have a sense of urgency for you to take certain actions, especially giving you deadlines to say you need to click on this link to be able to access this within the next 10 minutes. So that sense of urgency from emails requiring you to take certain actions, especially by clicking on certain links to be able to impute certain information that are personal to you, you need to watch out for those things.
It's really an interesting one. I must thank you so much, Dr. Fenel Sakwe, for starting the week with us on the show here. You're the chairman of Lagos State Cybersecurity Advisory Board. Thank you for spending your time with us. We appreciate this, and do have a great time.
Thank you, Tolu. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Hope to have you on the show again soon.
Of course, anytime. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so